What's up everybody, Robin Gaming here. So, all good things must come to an end obviously at some point, and today that counts for my top 25 games of all time. It's been quite a few months since I, set out to do this series after many of you requested me to share my list of my favorite games that I'd ever played, right? And so, I was very excited about it, and having released a pod every 1 or 2 months, now we have finally arrived at the top 5, so basically my favorite games ever made. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to pretty much share this final list of pretty much my favorite games out there. And so without further ado, let's actually simply get into it, right? At number 5, we're gonna kick things off with a, maybe a pretty surprising entry in the list because you've never really heard me talk about it. It's a very old game. Basically, this game goes way back to when I was about maybe 4 to 6 years old or something like that. Don't remember it too well, of course. Yeah, basically it was this celebration sort of thing where we got gifts, and the thing I got was my very first console ever actually, which was the Super Nintendo, and there was one game that I got with that, right? And so that game was Super Mario, and pretty much what it was is it was the Super Mario Collection, All-Stars I think it was called, which had, pretty much the old Mario games on there, Super Mario 1, 2, and 3, pretty much remastered I guess for the Super Nintendo or something like that, plus the lost levels, but the main game that it was about was the actual Super Nintendo Mario game, and the one I'm obviously talking about is Super Mario World. That game to me is like the perfect example of just the perfect platformer actually. Like there is nothing to critique about that game almost, it seems. And even now, I think it came out like 25 to 30 years ago at this point. That game is still such a blast to play, having just gotten the Super Nintendo, classic as well, being able to revisit the game and stuff, man, it's just video game perfection to me. The game controls super smooth like any Mario game pretty much does, but the environments are so great, the soundtrack is absolutely awesome and still sticks in my head to this day, I sometimes find myself thinking about the soundtrack of Super Mario World, right? And I've just had such great nostalgic memories of playing that game with, for example, with my family members or with my friends or even by myself. I mean, I've had, once again, being a kid of 4 to 6 years old, I sometimes had these sleepless nights where I was just playing through Mario World all night, and it was absolutely awesome. Great memories that I have of it. A very hard game to beat for me back in the days because I was so young and stuff, but it's what I grew up with. I grew up with Mario, and that's why even to this day I still look forward a lot to games like Super Mario Odyssey, which is pretty much the reason why I bought my Switch initially. But yeah, that's just like, that's one of those games where it's just absolutely, like, it was fantastic. It's a platforming masterpiece. That's simply what it comes down to, even today. At number 4, we're gonna move on. We're gonna once again go to another very critically acclaimed game, and this is probably my favorite open world game ever. I say probably, but that's for sure. And what I'm talking about is Red Dead Redemption. Obviously, like it was 2010 when the game came out. I bought it the very first week that it came out too, but I was pretty skeptical about it, and not because I thought that the quality wouldn't be good or something, because it's Rockstar. Like, Rockstar is gonna do a great job with this game, but I guess it was the Western setting which didn't really seem super appealing to me, so I was a little like, insecure about it, or like, not sure if I was really gonna like the game that much. But basically, like I said, I bought the game when it came out, and it just blew me away in so many ways. I mean, at first the story was absolutely fantastic. The characters that Rockstar is known for, yeah, that they do so well in open world games. I mean, John Marston's still one of my favorite video game protagonists ever. All the characters surrounding him were great too, the story that it told there and stuff. The ending was obviously mind-blowing, but I think really what made Red Dead Redemption stand out so much for me personally was the vibe and the atmosphere, because, if you play Rockstar games, if you've played GTA, the average GTA, then you're just driving around in that world, you've got the radio, radio on, blasting through it, right, with some rock music or something, and that's awesome. You get a great sense of, feeling from that, right? But in Red Dead Redemption, it was the complete opposite. The vibe of that game was calm, it was subtle, it was silent, you know what I mean? Like, you would just drive around, ride around on your horse, having no radio play in the background. If anything, you would get some, like, small whistling soundtrack and stuff, and that's about it. There was nothing more to it than that. And so it created this awesome sense of just, yeah, like subtleness, right? You really felt that way riding around through the world, seeing the beautiful vistas and stuff, and that's what even made it more special, that the moment you got to Mexico, that great moment that many people who have played the game will still remember, that was like the first time I think in a game that an actual song started playing, and you know, it felt super special that way because it hadn't been, you know, like that at all before, right? So that game was just great in so many ways, from the story to the characters to the vibe and atmosphere. Like I said, I even really enjoyed the multiplayer too, where, you know, I remember grinding with my friends, you know, the co-op missions to get the maximum level, or that the team deathmatches and the free-for-alls would always start off in this cool shootout, right? Like if you were playing free-for-all, you'd all be standing in a circle with your enemies, and the goal was to be the last person standing, kind of like PUBG and Fortnite style, I guess. And then it would, you know, after that transition into a normal free-for-all match. It was just great fun. Like that game was just, you know, it was an awesome experience. That's really what it was. And so I obviously absolutely cannot wait for Red Dead Redemption 2 coming out next year. And I can only hope that it can manage to, you know, like, once again give me that same feeling of sensation and feeling of just, you know, awesomeness playing through it, right? So at number 4, Red Dead Redemption. Then we go to number 3. This is a very personal pick, a game that is actually not super critically acclaimed or something at all, that came out, that didn't sell super well, but it had this niche following of people that really loved it for what it was, me included, that had been asking for a sequel ever since, that we did eventually get as well. Sadly didn't really live up to the same standards, but it's just a game that I once again have such great memories of, and that absolutely blew me away. At number 3 for me is Mirror's Edge, the original Mirror's Edge that I played on the PS3. What can I say? You know, I'd always been intrigued by free running and parkour. Like, it always seemed fun to me, you know, this type of extreme sports. And so the moment that I saw that they were making a game like that, it instantly had me intrigued by it. And I remember it was 2008 when it came out. I had just gotten my PS3 and I did not have a lot of money to buy games and stuff, so I was literally playing the demo of the game for like a month straight because of how much I enjoyed it. I was just replaying that same prologue mission, that same tutorial the whole time, and I absolutely couldn't wait to finally get the money to buy it and stuff. And when I did, yeah, I mean, I just had so much fun with it. It's technically a game that, you know, only takes like 6 hours to beat or something, and that's about it, and it doesn't really have much more than that. No multiplayer. It had some time trials, but that was pretty much all that it came down to. But this is a game that I've put hundreds of hours into, and I'm not lying. Like, I replayed the campaign so many times. I tried to improve my own time trials so many times in that game. In fact, it came to the point where I have had world records, like literally world records on the PS3 on some of the maps in the time trials. Which I was super happy about and stuff. But Mirror's Edge was this game that just blew me away. It was so fun to play. I cannot describe that. Like, the way they did first-person free running in that game, it was very hard to get used to at first, and it took a while to really get a grasp of it and stuff. And many people complained because they found the game too difficult, and they never really found it too fun because of how hard it was to them. But I think if you really managed to finally get a hang of it, then it felt like absolute freedom in a first-person game. And so, yeah, once again, Mirror's Edge is just a great personal pick where that game, man, that game was special to me, and easily one of those games where, because it was, you know, because it sold so poorly, because you had so few people talking about it, it really felt like mine, you know, it felt like that's my game. And so in that way, Mirror's Edge earns the number 3 spot on my top 25 games of all time. And then we're moving on to number 2. I've been thinking for a very long time if Mirror's Edge should not have been number 2 or this one, and I could really like switch them around. They're about the same sort of like level for me as far as personal connection to the game goes. At number 2, I might have a really surprising pick to some of you, but this is a game that once again I've just had so much fun with. It's absolutely insane, and all of these games came out around the same time too, the whole top 4 actually, so that was just a fantastic time in gaming for me. We're talking about a game that came out in 2009, in the beginning of the year actually, that, yeah, I bought because I'd always been somewhat intrigued, once again, by extreme sports, which includes skateboarding in a way too, and obviously I'm talking about Skate 2. What can I say about this game? some of the most fun I've had in gaming ever. Once again, this was an EA game that innovated so much. It was something different. Like, after you had played so many of the Tony Hawk games, which I had done myself in the past as a kid, you know, I played a ton of Tony Hawk games, but you know, it never really felt like it recreated that sense of skateboarding to me that much. It went a little too over the top, of course, with all the things you could do in it. It was never super satisfying because you used the buttons to do the tricks, and in comes Skate, and it did something completely different, where you used the right analog stick to do your tricks, and where the vibe was just so realistic. Like, everything was kept to a very realistic standard. You know, you could not do absolutely crazy stuff in that game. I mean, some of it would go quite extreme, and definitely more extreme than it is in real life, but not on Tony Hawk levels where you were doing absolutely batshit crazy stuff. You know, it always felt realistic at some point, and then once again, it's this thing where, I guess technically this is also an open world game, so in that way Red Dead Redemption maybe isn't my favorite open world game ever made, but Skate 2 was more about the gameplay, right? Red Dead Redemption was about the world, so in that way, I guess it does make sense that I said that. But in Skate 2, once again, like, it was just so fun to play. The soundtrack was great. I've had great memories as well playing the game online, where the community of it was absolutely awesome. You know, I mean, you went to the average Call of Duty game and you would get kids screaming at you in a headset, calling you all kinds of names and stuff. And in Skate, to me, the way I experienced it at least, it never felt like that. It felt like people were very supportive of each other. You had mainly game modes, for example, where you would take turns, and so a lot of it was just chilling around, listening to the soundtrack, maybe talking to people online, while everybody got their go every now and then, right? And so everybody tried to, you know, pull off the best tricks and get the most points. And once again, it's this thing where I felt the community was very just very awesome, like very complimentary and stuff, and you know, actually wanted to have a good time with each other rather than call each other names, like I said. That was great about it, but this is a game that, you know, obviously it wasn't about the story at all. I mean, it had it, and it was cool, and I liked the way the people talked, and it created this great skateboarding culture, recreated it in a video game, so that was cool to see. But it was a game that was just super fun to play, that I've put dozens, if not hundreds of hours into. Yeah, you know, doing all the challenges, playing online, sometimes just starting up a game of free skate, and it's literally just about, like, there was no challenge to it. I was just enjoying myself, you know, skateboarding through the world, and that's what it was all about. And so Skate 2 to me is also one of those games where it's just an unforgettable experience. You know, it was great to me. I've been asking for a Skate 4 ever since, which sadly, you know, it doesn't look like we're going to be getting anytime soon. But nonetheless, I mean, yeah, Skate 2, to me, the number 2 game ever made. And then we're gonna move on to number 1. Now, I don't really think I need to say too much here. The whole reason why I started this series of my top 25 games of all time was obviously to get other games in the spotlight and to start talking about some of the other games that I've really enjoyed myself. It wasn't necessarily about the number 1, which you all know has to be a part in the Uncharted franchise, and you all already know which my favorite is probably as well. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. I mean, that, like, I've set out to, of course, include just one game per franchise in this entire list. Otherwise, you would have probably 4 Uncharted games or something filling up the whole top 25, which wouldn't have been fun at all. But Uncharted 2 was the game that just once again blew me away when it came out. It felt like it was the game that everybody was talking about at the time, in like fall 2009. It had been maybe 6 months or something since I'd played Drake's Fortune. I'd always been looking forward to the sequel, and I knew that it was going to be, you know, much better than the first one had seemed already with where it was going and stuff. But that game was just a milestone in gaming to me. You know, it showed me what video games could be, that they could be actual super engaging stories, that they could have amazing set pieces where you couldn't believe you were actually playing them. You know, you were playing a game and you weren't just watching this thing play out. That was what was great about it. The characters were amazing, especially in Uncharted 2, of course, the ones they introduced. I mean, Chloe was great, Flynn and Lazarevich to me were amazing villains. The original trio, like, you know, Nathan Drake, Sully and Elena, of course, had some of their best moments, even though Sully was sadly not that much in the game. The environments were amazing. The way that it transitioned through them so organically, from, you know, yeah, from Borneo to Nepal to Tibet, like, you name it, you know, it was just done so well. It felt like a video game perfection to me, and it's an experience that was so mind-blowing that I've been a fan of the franchise ever since. I still consider it, you know, yeah, my favorite franchise ever made. It got me to start my YouTube channel eventually. I still talk about it to this day. Uncharted is still a thing to this day as well, but of course the Lost Legacy literally having just released a couple months ago. Uncharted 2 was a milestone in gaming. Everybody was talking about it. It changed the industry as well, because after that you saw so many of these, you know, awesome cinematic linear experiences coming out. Obviously Naughty Dog themselves kept following it up with sequels, with The Last of Us, and all pretty much inspired by what they started with, not just the original Uncharted, but especially Uncharted 2, where it felt like they really had taken everything to another, you know, to another level. Better environments, adding set pieces to it, you know, having storytelling be such a big part of it, and just all around creating this amazing experience, you know, that stayed with me for since the moment it came out, right? And so I could also still talk about the multiplayer, of course, which was great, which completely surprised me because everybody thought it was going to be tacked on, and it definitely wasn't. It was an awesome experience, very well worked out, very basic as well, but that was no problem in the slightest. That's what was great about it, actually. And so once again, Uncharted 2 to me simply is the pinnacle in gaming. It's my favorite game ever made, and it's not really the reason why I set out to make this top 25 games of all time, because you all knew that already, let's face it. But nonetheless, yeah, this finally makes me, like, come to an end with this list, right? This is the end of my top 25 games of all time. I really hope that you enjoyed this sort of like journey throughout some of my most nostalgic memories and stuff of the past, I guess, 23 years of my life right now. So yeah, it's been absolutely awesome to do it. I hope you all enjoyed, you know, watching these parts and stuff. Let me know what your favorite games of all time were in the comments, of course. I would like to read about your personal choices as well. And support me on Patreon like all the people next to me if you want me to keep going with making these type of videos. If you want to get early access, for example, to some of the upcoming countdowns. And I'm definitely gonna, you know, start doing other lists in the future too, including a lot more awesome videos like Q&As, the podcast episodes. And yeah, you know, it's been absolutely awesome to do this. Thanks everybody for checking it out. I really appreciate it. Leave a quick like to help support my channel. And then for now, hope you enjoyed the list. So thanks a lot for watching, and hope to see you again next time.